there is a group of people that have a special place in God's heart. They are so special. They are so special that even Jesus mentions them in the book of Matthew, chapter 25. And what he says in Matthew 25, from verse 31, is that as you give the least of this, you're giving it to him, right? So these group of people are the needy, the poor, the orphans, and people that can never repay you. Now, when giving, I'm sure you have questions. A lot of questions have come up where, how do you know to give properly? So I'm going to share the principles that I use when giving that particular group of people. Now, the four things I want you to kind of think about or understand or be aware of are: number one, God is the rewarder. When you give a person who can never repay you, do not expect them to pay you back, or once you see them 10 years down the line, you're like, hey, I helped you in 2019. You need to give this and this and this to me. No, right? There are seasons in our lives. Seasons shift, seasons change. Life has ebbs and flows. And so there are seasons of abundance and seasons of not so abundant, right? And you can see that with the time where Joseph was interpreting the dream for Pharaoh: 7 years of abundance and 7 years of famine. And the wisdom there is that in the time of abundance, you are supposed to store for the 7 years of scarcity. Just an example that seasons shift and seasons change. Now, if the person's season changes for the better and you see them, then you're like, hey, remember when I helped you? Can you help me? No. Your reward comes from God. God is the one that rewards you. Understand that, be aware of that. Now, they can give to you, absolutely, but it is not our job to remind people what we have done for them. That is not your job. Okay, so the thing I want you to be mindful of: number one is God is a rewarder. Number two is give with a clear conscience. So there have been some concerns and questions concerning giving people when you see them, they are addicted to something, and you don't want to finance their addictions. You don't want to finance the bad habits they have chosen to adopt. I fully understand that. I honor your introspection. I honor your thought process on this. But just be aware that sometimes people make bad choices, but they also need food, right? They also need food. But to assist you in having a clear conscience is that instead of giving that person money so where they can buy drugs and substances where they are addicted to that substance, you can buy them food. You can ask them, what would you like to eat? I remember my brother and I were out. My brother and I and a friend were out, and somebody came up to us and asked for money. They were hungry. And my brother asked him, what do you want to eat? And he gave him the order. He basically said, I want this, 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 and this. My brother memorized that, and we went to the store, to the food restaurant, bought him the exact thing he had ordered, and gave it to him. So my brother could leave that interaction with a clear conscience. Somebody came up to me who said they were hungry and wanted food. I bought them the food they wanted. So we can't assume that somebody wants bananas, somebody wants buns, somebody wants water. Maybe to assist you, you can say, what would you like to eat? What would you like to drink? Give them an option to make decisions themselves. And then if you're able to, if time allows you to, go purchase it for them and then give it to them. Then you can leave with a clear conscience, knowing that you were not responsible for funding their addictions, funding potentially their bad decisions. Because sometimes, even though somebody's addicted or smells like alcohol, it does not mean that they don't eat. They do eat. They actually do eat. It's just they smell what they may have a scent that gives them away. And so, not to dwell on that, but if it helps your conscience, purchase them what they want to eat, and that way you can have a clear conscience before God and before man. You can find that in Acts 24, verse 16, where Paul says that I always make an effort to have a clear conscience before God and before man. And so, my advice for those of you who are worried about funding addictions is that ask the person what they want to eat, buy it for them, give it to them. All right? All right. My third advice or thing to keep in mind is that um, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. When you give in secret. Don't record people. Give it in secret, and your Father in heaven, who sees in secret, will reward you in public. All right? So, third thing to keep in mind is that give from your heart with love in secret. Do not let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Do not publicize it. Do not record them. There are humans, there are people, okay? So be aware of that. My fourth thing that I would like you guys to keep in mind, that I keep in mind, is that I tend not to track what they do with the funds. For example, if somebody needs $100 and I give them $100, I'm not going to say, did you spend the $100 the right way? It is not my job to track what they did with those finances. It's God's job. God is all knowing. God is all seeing. God is everywhere at all times. If they go to heaven and say, Lord, I had no food, God will remind them. According to Psalm 136, verse 25, he says that he gives all flesh food. He feeds all of us. It is in his best interest to feed all of us. He does not leave his people hungry. And so, one way that God feeds all flesh is by orchestrating and speaking to you and I in our hearts to assist the needy, the poor, the orphans, the homeless, and those that can never repay you, even those in your family. All right. But just be aware that when you do give out funds, do not keep track of them. It is no longer yours. You have given it over to another person. If they decide to regift that money, it's their prerogative. That's what they want to do. If they decide to buy food in it, amazing. If they decide to throw it in the trash can, it is their prerogative. Okay. So, four things that I keep in mind when I'm giving out. So discretion is key. God is the one that rewards you in due time, in due season. You are lending to God according to Proverbs 19, verse 17. The only time we lend to God is when we do not forsake the needs of the poor. That is the only time we lend to God, and He will repay you. Be discreet. God bless you. I hope this helps.